Good morning, Graham. Everybody, I want to introduce Graham. And Graham is with the National Vehicle Residency Collective. And Graham, I wanted to talk to you about what it is that your group is trying to do and accomplish, what your mission is, what your long-term goals may be.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Oh,
Happy to
sure.
talk about the N.V.R.C. So the National Vehicle Residency Collective is a nationwide, we're actually all across North America. We don't say which nation we are, but we are a nationwide policy. The National Vehicle Residency Collective is a nationwide property rights and civil rights advocacy group for people living in their vehicles, whether you're in a small vehicle, a large vehicle, whether you're part-time, full-time, or you're car camping out of your sticks and bricks, whether you're out here in these beautiful BLM lands or you're in the city, we all need a place to be. We need a place where we can safely exist, where we can throw away our garbage, where we can take a poop, where we can get some water and some electricity. And so what we do is we work to both preserve those spaces where they are to make sure we have access to the open access lands, that the L.A.V.A costs and stuff don't go up too much, that they prohibit people from being in spaces like that, but also so that we develop model policies for communities. Yeah, we also develop model policies for communities to have alternatives to the toolkit that they usually have. They tend to have 3 tools in their toolkit, whether that's writing a ticket, towing a person, or putting up another overnight parking sign. We try to give alternatives to that, such as, what about the
alternatives to the police?
Alternatives to communities criminalizing people.
Okay.
And alternative tools for their toolkit, right? So rather than just ticketing and towing or putting another overnight parking sign, we say, what about that county fairground out here that no one's using 9 months out of the year? Or what about that big parking garage that's next to every city hall across the country that no one's parking in overnight? There are spaces all throughout our communities that we could be using to safely be and have access to garbage and a water or a toilet that will allow us to live happy, full, healthy lives. So we work not just with people who are nomads full-time, who are needing spaces, but also people who are living in the cities who may have been displaced into their vehicles. A lot of people in the cities particularly are looking to move out of their vehicles, and they have these things called safe parking programs, which are really, really helpful for people who want to get into housing. But as you know, a lot of us, this is our housing. This is our home. In fact, we're solving a housing crisis.
Do you think, Graham, that this is a fad or this is a long-term reality?
Well, I think people have been living in their vehicles since as long as people have had vehicles. So I think it's anything but a fad. I think this is human life. I think this is how we work. This is an adaptive strategy that people have been using for forever. And living in a vehicle is a form of settlement that is one of the oldest forms of settlement. There's even before cities, right? I'm an anthropologist and have studied nomadism for hundreds and hundreds of years and thousands of years. And I think that, this is definitely not a fad. I think that for many people, there's a connection between housing unaffordability, between natural disasters, between not wanting to be in the politics of the communities where they live, and people moving into vehicles and wanting to find another life. So,
do you think this would fit everybody, or you need a specific trait to be able to deal with living inside a vehicle on the road?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's a trait, because I've met so many different people. There's so much variety among the nomad and vehicle resident community. But I don't know that it is for everybody. I do think that you need to know what you're getting into, right? It's not necessarily easy being out here in the desert, and I think that you need to prepare yourself. But I think for a lot of people, they're moving in their vehicles because they really have no other options. A lot of people who are on fixed and limited incomes, who are maybe only getting $700 a month from SSI, this is an affordable way to live, right, in the van out in the BLM lands. And I think for a lot of the people that I've worked with also in the cities who are receiving far less than that, they have no option but to park in their RV that may not be mobile by the Home Depot. And this is why we try to make sure that we have garbage facilities for people who are in those spaces, that we've tried to support. We've actually helped to support these RV pump out programs that drive a honey bucket truck to RVs and help to drain their septic tanks so that they're not putting it down into the storm drains, because it paints us all with a bad brush, and we can work better together to make sure that we have healthy spaces and maintain those spaces.
What is your time frame for something like this? What do you want to accomplish, say, in the next year? What would you be happy with seeing that you feel you have made a difference in the next year, say?
Yeah, so we've been around for 4 years so far, and a lot of what we've done is to develop our membership and our base and our funding and governance and all that stuff so that we can be sustainable. What we're really moving into this next year and going forward is around public policy, is actually developing more model policies for communities and showing how that they are actually effective in communities to reduce taxpayer cost, to get people into a safe place where they can be, and also to maintain open access land so people who don't want to be in the cities have a place where they can be outside the cities as well.
But are you targeting, like, let's get the state of California, or let's get the state of Iowa, or let's get the state of Ohio? Do you have groups in each one, or are you focusing on one and trying to make that a model and then use that model to go to the next state?
So the answer is yes to all the above. So yes, so mainly what you said last is that we try to work with communities to develop these models and then show how they're effective to other communities. So for example, like I was talking about the RV pump out program, Seattle had a program like that. We actually have a conference at the National Vehicle Residency Collective every other year. That Seattle program presented at the first year. The city of San Jose saw that presentation and said, hey, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do something like that down in California. They developed a similar model. They brought in garbage bags so that they paid people $5 a garbage bag to clean up the garbage around their area. That was much cheaper than the city staff doing it. And then we were able to bring in Johns Hopkins University and Brown University engineers, scientists, to study the pathogens that were being diverted from the storm drains into the septic treatment facilities by these programs, right? And to show the public health advantage of these programs. Now we're actually looking at how their programs are, the cost effectiveness.
I was going to say the cost savings.
That's right, how they reduce costs for the taxpayer and the communities and for the policing, and what that might look like if we have those programs not just on street but off street. How that helps communities develop more parking spaces for people who may not need housing case management, which is extremely expensive, but just need a place to park their home with access to a garbage and a place where they can go to the bathroom.
Yeah, and that is really a priority. You know, showering, I don't think is a necessity. Sponge bathing, that's what our pioneers did. Running water is a relatively new item for us, for, society. So I don't worry so much about the showers as I worry more about the human waste. Let's put it that way.
That's right. Or household waste, right?
Or household waste.
We all produce household waste.
We all
right?
produce, yes.
And I also think that it is important that we have access, what's called WASH access, the water access, sanitation, and hygiene. That it's really important that people are able to get fresh water to survive. And it's also important that people can wash their hands to stay healthy. And showers are very important, and particularly in the city.
They're just, I'm just saying, on a priority list. They're not at the top for me.
Well, and that's and particularly for people who are living long term in their vehicles in the same spot in the cities, showers are vital, right? Because they may not have access to water to be able to clean themselves, particularly. But they have
in the city. We have access to showers.
Some do.
So and not everybody. It depends on your financial. You can become a member of a and get a shower every day, a fitness club,
Right, but that's also one of the challenges too, is that many cities have laws that require oversized vehicles like an RV to park in an industrial zone. That's really common. In fact, the entire state of California has that. And what that means is that those industrial zones are often far from the Planet Fitness. They're far from
everything.
Services, or even like protective policing. So a lot of communities of people, particularly living in larger vehicles, have to park in the most sort of environmentally polluted, dangerous, disconnected areas. And that's one of the reasons why we try to say, look, we need spaces where people can actually have a safe access to what they need to not just survive, but to thrive. To actually, and that's part of it too, is to show that we are contributing already to our society. So many of us have paid our dues. We continue to pay our dues. And we try to show that to the policymakers that, we are a voting bloc, that we have that we are constituents, right? And that we demand that our voices be heard and that our rights be respected.
Well, someone's saying she wants her rights respected.
I can tell.
So what she's bringing a good point.
That's right.
What about those who have dogs? Is that in your plans where you have like there's certain places where you can be with your dogs.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually a pretty common thing among safe parking programs. And so that I can explain a little difference between these parking programs. Most of them have places for pets because many people living in their vehicles have pets. It's very, very common. And so they have safe parking programs is kind of the most common model. Those are generally run through like the homeless services thing. So they're generally overnight only, mostly overnight only. They're mostly for smaller vehicles. They're typically, when you sign up for them, you get a housing case manager, and it's about moving the person into an emergency shelter, a tiny house, or they call permanent supportive housing.
But that's not your group.
Well, that is part of it because there are some of us who really can really use that. But what we also say is that that's not all of us, right? There's a lot of us who don't need that, and so so there's another model that's called supportive parking, right? And the supportive parking model is for larger vehicles. It's 24/7. You can stay for 9 months or a year. They also typically are made within the homelessness services because they're run by nonprofits. So when you sign up, you may say for down the line they're going to work with the person to move into housing, but there's much less sort of push for the person to actually get out of their vehicle into housing. Some of the newer models of that actually, though, on the other hand, there's a model in Seattle where when you sign up for it, you have to say you're going to give up your RV to move into a tiny house.
See, a lot of people don't want that.
Exactly, that's right. A lot of people don't want that, and so and nothing against that program, but that's one of the challenges they've had is getting people in because not everybody wants to do that. And so there's another model, a third model that we call stable parking, right? And a stable parking model is more like a mobile home park.
Yeah.
Right. It's more like a place where a person can park long term, but there's not really that push into housing.
They need to build a community.
That's right. And we need to have
and
the
protect each other.
That's
infrastructure.
Right. That's right. So we have the infrastructure to be able to have a safe place for people to again get their septic taken care of, their get water, get food, and and employment services or other social services if that person wants it. But there's not as much of that requirement for it.
Right.
And then I actually think there's another model that we could call a temporary amenity site, like a rest stop.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there used to be rest stops all over the place that were open to us, and they're closing more and more. And you see this all the time that you can't park overnight at a lot of them. And a lot of them, they used to have a septic dump, and a lot of those are going away too.
Yes.
And that's one of the things we want to show is that we have people who are passing through communities. They're only there for a little bit because they're vacationing or they're visiting a family member momentarily, and they need a place where they can park for a short period of time, charge up their batteries, go to the bathroom, drain their tanks, and also be able to still be on the road.
Yeah.
And all that fits into, I would say, along with these sorts of open access spaces, right? We need to preserve the BLM spaces for people who don't want to be anywhere near the city, right? Who enjoy a life on the road out in nature, as so many of us do, and really just enjoy the freedom of this.